want them or you guys want them?
Yeah, I have a session. Alright, yeah, so I'm going to reset my questions so meal plans, financial aid, and allocation. So several questions that we kind of want to address here. The lowest meal plan adequate for a student on campus for 90% of all meals. How does level of HC affect this food point spending or meal plan selection? Students not on financial aid spend more or less food points, and that can affect vary based on financial aid received. So kind of just looking at how financial aid affects food plan allocation. So here are hypotheses. The amount of financial aid given in terms of which meal is choosing. Students receiving a low percentage of financial aid choose smaller plan. Students with financial aid are less likely to be off campus and thus spend more food points. This is an interesting sort of thing. They also are more likely to use their marketplace swipes. And third is that students with inactive meal plans are likely to have trouble getting food points throughout the semester. And so we're going to try to gather some data from HRL and from accounting. It may be difficult, I know there's been trouble in the past gathering this data, but if we can, here's kind of an outline of what we're going to do. So the due card data is pretty general, and then the dining data, I was going to get marketplace swipes and analyze that in kind of this detailed way that I won't get into. But we're also going to look at some financial aid data if possible, and look at some information. And then this is kind of our backup plan if that data collection doesn't work. We create a survey that looks at gender, looks at financial aid status, the meal plans that students with financial aid versus non-financial aid students choose, and meals, marketplace swipes, satisfaction with meal plan, and the amount of points that students had. So here are methodology. We're going to analyze the differences between points added based on levels of financial aid. We're going to analyze the difference in meal plan selection among students with higher and lower levels of financial aid. And we're going to analyze food point expenditure through the semester in order to determine whether there are differences in activity. So here are the different meal plans. Financial aid status varies. I'm sure some of you guys know, but there are different levels. I think there are 6 different levels of financial aid, and kind of the level of financial aid that a student has affects the meal plan they choose, how they allocate their food. Yeah.
And I have 2 partners on this project, Alex Song and Jeffrey Ho. Unfortunately, none of them be here tonight, but it's great. So the general question of interest from you guys was, what are student attitudes towards socioeconomic diversity and inequality at Duke? So this is kind of a broadish question, and we first kind of just broke it down into a few different areas of interest relating to these topics, and about 4. So like just demographics and student body, that's useful to know in terms of potentially correlation between characteristics of students and then their attitudes to these things. Perceptions about personal socioeconomic status, so kind of how different students perceive themselves in the Duke community and also just like greater world in general in terms of socioeconomic status. And then perceptions of the population, so kind of how they see their peers and how they kind of see the distribution of things. And then perceptions about the quality of these patterns and what types of effects they have on a student's experience. Okay, so basic research plan, start with data collection and cleaning, and then exploratory, more rigorous data analysis. We would like to, because our questions are, because this topic is kind of so broad and there are so many kinds of directions you can go in, we wanted to have the opportunity to kind of reformulate some more questions and potentially send out new survey questions in case, like if we see certain trends to better address those. But I don't know if we'll have time for that this semester. And then give it to you guys. Okay, so for data collection, because the question of interest really just directly to opinions and attitudes of students, all of our data is going to be collected through surveys. That can be pretty easily accomplished by the two surveys we mentioned at the beginning. Those both kind of very much touch on this topic. And so we use mainly the increasing social relations report to address our survey questions, and then proposals sent. And the initial survey will include all the sub-areas that mentioned in kind of the first 5 questions of interest. And oftentimes, when people taking surveys, the longer they are, the less likely they kind of are to finish it. So we were hoping we have an opportunity to, if the responses are limited, to readjust and then send out surveys for just each subtopic that would be like 3 or 4 questions to get higher response rates if that's necessary. Okay, and then, so these are the categories: basic demographic information, attitudes to socioeconomic diversity of Duke, perceptions of inequality of Duke, and effects on experience at Duke. And these next few slides just kind of list like what we're kind of thinking as our initial thoughts on the questions. And again, we would maybe want to adjust depending on how useful they seem to be. These are the ones on demographic information. These next ones are the ones we use to address attitudes towards socioeconomic diversity. So kind of just one like, how would you define yourself? And then where do you see yourself in income distribution? This would be probably one of the scale ones, if possible, like Quinn was talking about. And then where do you see yourself in income distribution too? And where do you think the majority of the student body actually is in income distribution? So this hopefully can kind of give us an idea of people's perceptions compared to others. And perceptions of inequality too. So we thought this was interesting in terms of try to see what people think about, their socioeconomic diversity and the other characteristics of them, how important that was for their admission into Duke. So, and how important it is for their peers' admissions into Duke. So these questions kind of address that, and financially. And then index on personal experience into Duke. So these questions kind of focus on getting to see like, if people have limited in any types of cultural endeavors or different things they could have done at Duke based on their socioeconomic status. So asking things about, life, if, people make active efforts to hide their socioeconomic status, things like that. And then just these are kind of what we saw as potentially where we go with our data analysis, just based on the type of data we're expecting to collect. But so we would be really looking at first the correlations between different ones of these questions, because it's not clear, which one is caused in terms of facts, like which ones are related, and we're going to be doing a lot of exploratory analysis to look at that. And then once we kind of see patterns like that, we'll be looking at which ones can, use as predictors, and then potentially some more complex ones to see if multiple factors can be predicted by multiple different characteristics and things like that.
All right. Don't have answer questions. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Speed?
The food point one, are you asking them about that financially, or do you match that data with information from the
Yeah, so if we are able to gain access to financial aid information, that could be huge paired with the survey, or it could be huge paired with other data that is offered. We don't know if we're going to be able to get that data or not. So there are certain things that we may or may not be able to get, and certain things that we may need to get through surveys. We just wanted access to.
Vice President Elder?
In regards to the socioeconomic diversity for Reef Life specifically, do you think it'd be possible to divide that question to one question about whether or not money in regards to rush was a problem versus money in regards to dues? Because there's a fee in order to rush Greek organizations, but there's also the added cost of dues, and the distinction between the two might be really useful.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good thought. We can definitely have that.
Thanks.
And if, throughout this semester, if you guys think about different questions you might have or different programs, please feel free to share it with us and we'll adjust.
Any further questions?
So this is Joe.
All right, thank you guys. Moving on, is protest board Hopkins here yet? All right, SOC recommended legislation.
Akil, are you here? Having a question time.
Question time, executive board, can you please come down?
Yeah, sorry.
Why were you wearing a mask? Now you're taking it off. Like it's okay. Oh,
Okay, so this is a question from Senator Jane, who won the iPads?
You're gonna find out on Friday.
Okay, this is a question for her. What's the class that opened?
March, early March.
Early March?
There's a great story in the Chronicle from this morning about giving all of the details. Okay, well, it was a detailed story outlining all of the specific dates, including the bridge date. And basically, the only thing restricted with the bridge is whether or not they can pour concrete.
So the bridge concrete is already poured and in place. The problem was earlier in the months was the weather. It was too cold to pour the concrete. But now that it's in place, it's just moving along. The pub opens February 9th though, which is good.
Senator Curtis?
All right, so this is directed at Tanner. You said you might elaborate on the meeting you had with Durham city officials. What happened?
Yes, this afternoon I met with Steve Schul, who is a professor in Stanford, sits on Durham City Council. And it was kind of shocking to me that we hadn't met before, or DRA hadn't engaged with him, because he does a lot of Durham stuff. But it was a cool meeting. So the main thing that we focused on was first, how do we want undergrads to engage in issues of municipal and local policy. And we sort of talked about the transience of students and how we might institutionalize something where Stanford might get involved in education policy that the city council takes on, or creating some kind of department within Stanford to do some more intentional work on data analytics or what have you. So that was cool. And I have a few sort of follow-up exploratory meetings in the next few weeks. But the main stuff that we talked about was sort of that I was just curious about was one, how a couple initiatives that DRA is considering have already sort of potentially taken place among other organizations in Durham, and then two, what are the politics around some specific issues, i.e. voterizing laws and then minimum wage work at Duke, and then how would he think it would make sense for DSG and other groups to move forward. So with respect to Senate resolutions, et cetera, one thing that I was thought was the case but wasn't sure but confirmed was that so Duke pays minimum wage to all of its workers, but any work that's contracted out by Duke, i.e. if Duke hires a construction company to come build the new West Union, those workers aren't under the same obligation to be paid the living wage that Duke pays. So
Yes.
do you want to clarify?
Yeah, so Duke has a $12 an hour minimum wage as its base for any Duke employee. So most Duke employees are actually lab clinicians or lab techs, people who work in the hospital, who are either full or part-time Duke employees. Usually that $12 an hour comes with benefits. Most of the professional staff at the university too also operates under that Duke full employee status. The people who we're considering as contracted workers are also the people who make about $8 an hour, so still above NC, but much lower than the Duke more living wage standard. And those are people who work for a lot of the dining facilities, maintenance, construction. So the things that you would assume should have, perhaps should have that higher minimum wage, if I would get political, don't necessarily.
Yeah, so hopefully that clarifies. So that was helpful just in terms of information, and then obviously that's a whole issue that we're going to look into. But the other thing that I thought was really cool was one idea was to do a program similar to what GPSC is trying to do. I'm going to try to keep this brief and keep going. Is to do groups of students would partner with Durham Public Schools and say oh, I did my thesis on Hamlet English, and I'm a Durham teacher who might want to teach class or have a class opening, and I want to do a lesson on Hamlet, and then you can say hey, Duke, send 3 students over for 1 or 2 class periods and we'll engage in the community that way, at the middle or high school level, which I thought was pretty cool. So,
Again, meetings to come with that, but again, exploratory, trying to figure out what the deal is, going from there. But it sounds like there's potential to engage in some like larger scale stuff than we thought, so that's pretty sweet. But does that answer your question? Sorry.
I'm more interested in the gentrification issue and what role do you have to play in that in terms of fixing it?
So a few things. One is that like some of that is university driven, a lot of it historically is university driven. Now a lot of the things that are happening in gentrified areas are a response to the development the university has already done, i.e. putting up luxury apartment complexes to support a university that previously invested in things like American tobacco. So that's not something that's like tractable from a Duke University standpoint, but it is something that affects the quality of life of Durham residents. So to that end, what like made sense to us was to work on things like minimum wage, for example, for contracted workers who might work at ABP, rather than say, we don't think it's Duke's sort of right, or it would be in the best interest of Duke to like, you know, encourage or subsidize some new apartment building to go up by Berkshire, right? So like, those are two different issues that I think you can approach from different areas. But it's also complicated and incredibly political, and like, development is not always a bad thing. So there's a lot sort of wrapped up there. But we think what makes sense in terms of like scope of issue and like sort of potential for understanding among the student body would be working with contracted workers too. Because those are people we talk to, right? Like, you know, at the loop. So yeah.
Any further questions, Jen? Senator?
What was the outcome with the leadership program for
So we ended up getting around 2,800 signups, which is over 40% of the student population.
You're paying $6 a person for a $100 subscription.
Yeah, so it's around
Pretty good.
$1 person for a full year, by the way, which is pretty spectacular. If you did that on your own, it'd be like $7 a month.
Seriously?
We're currently writing an article about it next week. And then I think the week after that, everyone who's signed up should be receiving an email from the New York Times outlining the steps for signing up. We will be having a second wave of registration, probably in like a month or so, for those people who missed the first wave. So if you missed it, you'll still be able to.
Call it the fifth wave. We'll be coming out with the fifth wave.
We'll call it.
It'll be funny. No, you go.
Will it be a program that's be renewed every year?
So that depends on how many people end up using it. So the New York Times keeps really clear and like analytical information based on like how many people are actually using it, like how frequently, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, etc. So we're going to use that, and then like Michael Pell, who helped us a lot with it, kind of conducted this like break-even analysis, and we're kind of trying to set the target higher than that. So we'll see just based on how people use it, because we're not going to keep funding a system that people don't use like we've been doing in the past 15 years. So it'll be reevaluated at the end of the month.
Any further questions?
I have just a couple updates really quick. So there's 3 things. The first thing is one of the things that the provost brought up to me and like a few other people sort of a few months ago was that her office is working on coming up with a 4-year curriculum for Duke John University, sort of going forward. So thinking about how to establish a liberal arts education there. My original response to that was like very concerned because I had spoken to one student who had like a very poor time at DKU and I was very worried. So Tara ended up planning a like DKU session where we invited all the students who had ever been there to sort of talk about their experience. And after sitting down for an hour, so Tara ended up being ill. She was wearing a mask earlier. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Took it off and felt self-conscious.
Yeah, your lips are blue. It's pretty weird. So anyways, after sitting down with them, it was actually really incredible positive feedback. So for anybody who's interested, I have a recording of the session that they've said I can like pass out or whatever if you're interested in hearing about individuals' personal stories. But I think what was really incredible about it is it was the first time that we sort of took a step outside of the Duke marketing tools as they relate to DKU and really took a step back and understood what the individual experiences of the students are. And so I think going forward, at least as an individual, I'm going to support sort of that movement because before I was very skeptical. And I think if you guys want more information about that, I'll communicate that to Tara because she can work to bring the provost into DSG so that you guys can ask some questions. Because one of the things that I was really struggling with is I felt like they were making this really big decision that had a huge effect on sort of the value of a Duke education because they were giving a Duke education on a new campus, or at least intending to, without consulting with students. And so it was important to me to make sure that consultation happened. And I feel more comfortable, but if you guys want to have that second check, you can listen to the transcript and we can bring her in. The other 2 things that I was working on right now, so the first thing is just one thing that was brought up to us is that on-campus daycare services, and this is sort of JP's purview, don't include undergraduate students. And so something JP worked on is he made sure that like now undergraduate students can
use the on-campus daycare services that are available to graduate students for, say, undergrads and children, which is, obviously possible. One of the things that we're working on right now is thinking about scaling different cost structures so that undergrads can actually access it and not have to pay like the large sums that are necessary. Sorry, we didn't do like our exact little note thingy, so I just want to talk about what we talked about. Is that pretty much it? That's what I talked about.
I have one small update. The Student Health Advisory Committee will be meeting with the pharmacy leadership team, which is in charge of developing the new health and wellness building. And if you guys have any ideas on what kind of medical issues you want the pharmacy team to tackle, or any medical things you want them to address, feel free to let us know, or any senators on the committee, or Vice President Gotcha.
Shivani?
I was just wondering, did you ever decide a time for that meeting? Like, I know you sent out the poll, but...
So wait, you will answer it all, but most likely the first Friday. Any further questions? Thank you, Zach. Associate Chair Meyer, are you here? I don't know, it's your point. In which case, we'll move on to old business until Nikhil gets here. Since Protest Hopkins is not here, will someone volunteer to chair while I present the legislation?
I nominate Vice President Wiseman.
Vice President Wiseman, would you like to?
So 5 is early, yes. Check 200.
All right, guys, so just to reiterate what I presented last week, in case you guys are in here, these Senate bylaw revisions are a direct response to the lack of accountability that you guys feel from exec and from DSG as a whole. And these measures are meant to make you guys feel more accountable and to make us effective on a holistic level. So over the past weekend, the Internal Affairs Committee met, revised, and changed some aspects of the original bylaw that I presented last week. We reduced the minimum hours from 6 to 4 hours, and we recommended that for office hours, it would be located at a centralized location like Marketplace, West Union, or Bryan Center, in particular during election cycles. We feel this would be a very helpful asset, especially in regards to what Vice President Melgard suggested last semester, tabling for elections with a raised participation, and for student bodies to get to know senators on a better level. Part B, again, deals with each senator meeting with at least one SOC recognized organization during the semester in order to get a larger perspective of what the student needs in particular student groups. Part C deals with if you do not live in House Council, then House Council without a senator living inside will be allocated to senators who don't already have House Council present to speak with. And Part D deals with, in addition, proposed by President McFly last week, dealing with each senator requiring to undergo financial training for DCAD and SOC. And Part E was suggested actually last Sunday by Senator Chadatia, that at the end of each semester, senators will be required to do a performance review predicated on their accomplishments or progress in personal competence. And again, I reiterate that this clause will expand at the end of this semester. So it's just a trial run to see how it goes, to see if it's effective. I know Senator Curtis is is in the middle of developing a system in order to ensure that each senator will be able to meet with their House Council and residential leaders in an effective manner. We'll be moving on forward with that. So at this point, are there any questions?
Is this officially the second reading?
This is officially the second reading.
So we'll be voting on this today. I just have a quick question. So, senators will be required to undergo a performance review. Is that conducted by the Vice President of the Senators Committee?
So that's a clause change in the bottom where the Executive Vice President, Senate Pro Tempore, and the Attorney General will conduct this performance review.
So
unless you feel that it needs to be changed.
It seems odd to me that the EVP and the Attorney General are going to be conducting a review of the Senator. It makes a lot more sense for the Vice President to do it. I don't know if that would be friendly to you.
That's friendly.
Yes, we should do that.
Good. Scroll down more. So you think you should only be the Vice President?
Yeah, just after undergo a performance review, put in conducted by Senator or Vice President.
Just this?
Yes. And I guess you could add, each respective vice president will be required to conduct a performance review. Is that fine with you?
Yeah, I think that's, okay, yeah, that's fine.
All right, any further questions? Senator Curtis?
So I really do like this idea a lot. I think it's awesome that we're going to have a senator going to office hours. My only concern is that House councils might not have people in the committee because we won't necessarily know, maybe they get 2 senators from academic affairs to go to talk to them, but nobody from food service, for example, that's why. So how do we kind of ensure that every House council has equal access as we want?
Right, and that's addressed in municipal. That's addressed in Part C. We changed that over the weekend.
So
Yep.
I don't know if I'm responsible.
Okay, would it be friendly in Part D, or well, I mean, at the end, another thing, but to include cultural competency training for senators as well?
No, that's not friendly.
Okay. Why not?
I don't feel the narrative provided by cultural competency training is something that should be imposed on the Senate as a whole. I think that each senator should be allowed to have their own individual opinion on cultural matters and choose regulations.
There's time for one question.
That's just enough.
Yeah, so you say that the judiciary and the attorney general, and the ADP, I guess, are gonna make sure that all these things are complied with. So they're, like, how would you know that a senator did their office hours, or, I mean, to say like, meet at least one SOC, like an organized full body meeting. So that's just like, it's a meeting for any group on campus.
Right, yes.
So what is that supposed to, like, to me, that, specifically that one doesn't make that much sense. Like, what is that supposed to tell?
To me, it's a means of ensuring a greater connection with the student body, in particular the student groups on campus, so a senator can attend one, they can understand what's going on. If there are any needs that a particular club organization or president needs, they can speak to them directly. If not, then at least they will know that a representative is there to see what they're doing, see if there's a potential pathway that they can help in a way. And
The time has expired. Is there a motion to extend?
To extend by.
How many, sorry?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, that's in order. Any other points or questions?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna roll that in. Go ahead.
sure.
So I have a couple of questions here. The first one is, could we perhaps, the SOFC meeting, add a second part of that says it should be an organization, students or the senators not already part of, outside of DSG, I'm in debate.
Sure, yeah, that's fine.
I think it would be kind of,
Redundant. Okay.
yeah.
Any questions? Sure, Bruce?
So, going back to my point before about equal voice, I like Clause C in that it's ensuring that every House Council gets a DSG senator. My concern I was trying to voice before is they might have lots of access to one committee but not really know what to do about another one. I don't know if you think that.
Right, I don't think it's particularly important for a senator on a specific committee to talk to the House Council President, especially when he can just simply redirect that information to the House Council President to the appropriate committee. Any further questions? Senator Curtis?
One final question is, I don't know what the status of the website for DSG is, but perhaps we should put a greater requirement in having contact information for each senator on the website.
I think that's an issue that is currently being addressed by Vice President Melgard, Senators Dillinger, and Kadakia. They're working on something, so.
There's time for one more question. Are there any other?
Financial training that occur at the beginning of this semester, like a one type of collective meeting for all senators, and then how do you envision that?
I envision that beginning at the beginning of the fall semester and at the end of this semester when we elect new senators after the April elections. So absolutely no financial training required for existing senators right now.
And with that, question time expires. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Not, we're going to move to a negative speech. Is there anyone wishing to speak against this bylaw change?
Motion to
Yeah,
recognize Annie Adair.
that is in order. Chief Secretary.
Yeah, I think you should second motion. Second. Just to recognize, this doesn't count as a negative speech, does it?
I'm giving you 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah, so I 100% agree with the sentiments that EDP Block is presenting in this. I think it's valid that senators want to connect to their constituents, feel like they understand what's going on with the student body. I just don't think these are in any way practical for us to employ one of them. I think it's great in theory to say that you're going to go meet with the House Council President, but I think you get into kind of nebulous of an area when you move to Central, when you move to West, where it's less pronounced than it is on East, and it'd be easy for the freshman centers to just go to their individual houses, but it gets too confusing when you get onto Central, so that's one thing. I think another thing is that these are not well fleshed out ideas. I think definitely something that the EVP can do, that I would recommend strongly that the EVP people are going to do, is take some time to really think about ways that you can really connect realistically with your constituents. I think these are great in theory, but we kind of all know what people think of DSG, like with a 30% voter turnout rate, people don't really care. So I really think that we should think of better ways of how you can connect with your constituents individually. And then I just think that it's not practical for us to employ these, and I think that if people really are motivated, that we don't have to big brother them into doing it. I think you guys are all grown-ups, we all go to Duke. You don't need the executive vice president and the attorney general kind of looking over your shoulder to make sure they're connecting with your constituents. That's your job. You can control whatever you want to control. That's about it.
Thank you, Chief of Staff Adair. Because Annie is not on Senate, that did not count as negative speech. However, I'm going to take time away if there is someone who wishes to speak against the speech of the legislation. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Thanks, Annie. All right, are there any points or motions on the floor? Okay, we don't, but any questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All against?
Is this voting on the motion to vote?
No, you don't have to vote on the motion to vote if it expires. Okay, that was too close, so we're gonna do a hand raise. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Yes.
This is the vote on the entire.
Yes. Okay.
Move to vote by roll call.
Okay,
Does that need a second?
No.
I don't hear a second.
It doesn't need a second, it's
yeah,
automatic.
that doesn't need a second. However, you do not call like all the points of motions. No. Yeah, we'll go into it though because that first vote is determinant. Can you thanks. Okay. So we're gonna do a roll call.
Senator Crowley.
Here, at aye. What?
Senator Backer. Senator Brown. Senator Gilbert.
Aye.
Senator Grant.
Nay.
Senator Gottlieb.
Senators, decorum during vote, please.
Senator Kane. Senator Tanner.
Yes.
Senator Minetto. Senator Sullivan. Senator Katzen.
Nay.
Senator Speed. Senator Shaw. Senator Gambardella. Senator Panzer. Senator Letourneau. Senator Rapalli. Senator Gamani. Senator Hardy.
Nay.
Senator Smith. Senator Kazakian.
Aye.
Senator Stern. Senator Key. Senator Dellinger. Senator Nango-Kowski.
Aye.
Senator Lentz. Senator Jason Chang. Senator Bissell.
Aye.
Senator Ian Chang. Senator Pecoraro.
Aye.
Senator Curtis.
Aye.
Senator Senator Zhao. Senator Moore. Nay. Senator Good.
Nay.
Senator Palmisano. Senator Bullock.
Nay.
Senator Ganguly. Aye. Senator Sung. Senator Uriah. Nay. Senator Wisner.
Nay.
Senator Brad Fogel. Senator Brunetti.
Aye.
Senator Skoufis. Aye. Senator Thompson. Nay. Senator Caldwell.
Nay.
Senator Madcock.
Nay.
Senator Camarda.
Nay.
Senator Wolchek. President Hawkins. E.B. Duhat.
Aye.
E.B. Norwalk.
Nay.
E.B. Gansel. Nay. E.B. Wiseman. E.B. Locken.
Nay.
E.B. Melvert. E.B. Dinner.
Nay. Yo, Melgar, you didn't vote.
Nay.
I think that's George.
Okay, 17 yes, we have no on that.
Point of inquiry, do we have a quorum?
We have 38 here out, so yes, quorum I believe is 35, so we do have quorum. Just bear with us, tell your friends to consent. Okay, that legislation fails, it can be presented next week.
Quick question, just point of, I don't know, help. Wait, did you say last time that you, like a lot of you are allowed to vote? I mean, just as a procedural thing? That like you, the EVP goes back for the voting, so you would have been allowed to vote. I don't know if you wanted to vote.
Yeah, I would have voted against it, so we're limited to the Yeah, I also don't think that whoever's chair should have a vote, and that's just my personal style.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, you can present next week.
SOC Chair McKeel, please announce.
Annual charity date auction gala. It's going to be held at Sharp Hall, and they received $3,000 from the UC, the Cultural Fund. And so basically what it is that they kind of rent out Sharp Hall and like, I don't know, it's like a charity auction kind of gala. They have it every year. And so what we're funding for them is kind of the rental and some just basic things like the DJ, just drinks and a few refreshments for the number of people that are going. And then that in total comes to $3,570. And it's once again on February 27th. And they received $3,000 from UCF. And it's kind of an event that they like organize with BSA and a lot of other organizations.
Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, would anyone like, we're now in line for protect negative, would anyone like to speak against the SOC recommended legislation? Seeing none, move to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Awesome. So the Duke NAACP chapter is having an event. What's it called? It's called Duke NAACP Revolutionary Love featuring Sister Outsider. And so they kind of got like the speaker or these two individuals to come down almost at the last minute, but they got a really good price for them, and the Mary Lou Williams Center graciously let them kind of use their center for it. And so basically these two speakers are coming from Raleigh, and they're going to add a lot of value for these specific issues. So we're just funding their honorarium and their flight and ground transportation. And the Mary Lou Williams Center, they believe will be packed. They say a lot of their events are usually well attended by a lot of cultural groups on campus. In the past, they've filled the Mary Lou Williams Center to capacity, and they expect to do so again with these speakers.
All right, any questions? We're now in line for protect negative, would anyone like to speak against the SOC recommended legislation? Seeing none, move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Great. So now we have the Jewish Student Union. They're having an event February 20th. It's the JSU's, I could be pronouncing this wrong, B'nai Mitzvah. They have it also, once again, every year in the Freeman Center. A ridiculous number of people go every year. They say 300 is like a lower estimate for who usually attends. They got $3,000 from the University Cultural Fund, and what we're once again funding for them is like kind of basic things like lighting, the catering, the DJ, and just the police and stuff that they need. Once again, it's an event that we host every single They host every year, and it's really well attended, and it's really big. If you guys haven't gone,
Are there any questions? Vice President Mandel?
Will there be one of those stations where they spray paint your name onto the
I don't know. We didn't fund that, but they said that the Freeman Center is helping them out with anything that we don't fund, so maybe. It's really fun. I've been.
Any further questions? All right, we're now online for Protect Negative. Would anyone like to speak against the legislation? Seeing none, move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Awesome. So next up, we have street medicine. They're holding this event on April 5th, so they're like applying a few weeks in advance. And it's going to be in Page Auditorium, and basically it's this, it's like a dance show. And so they're asking for us to help them with just the event staff, technical staff, and then the flyering and stuff. Once again, it's really good that they're planning this like 2 months in advance. As a result, they expect to get a large audience. They only said 100 based on the attendance last year, but they think that with like 2 months of marketing and stuff like that, they'll be able to exceed that, number. And yeah, so we're funding 2,251.
Are there any questions? We're now online for Protect Negative. Would anyone like to speak against the legislation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Okay. Now we have Vision for North Korea. They're holding an event on February 20th, and so they're inviting 2 North Korean defectors living in South Korea to promote a global cultural exchange, and I think that it's like a pretty interesting event. And so they got $1,000 from the Korea Forum and $300 from Ames, and so we just decided to fund what they were asking for, which was the flight for the 2 people, which is $3,000. Once again, I don't think I need to describe how important this event is as they're flying. They got 2 North Korean defectors to come and speak at Duke, and I believe these 2 people have spoken on other college campuses and things like that. So that's going to be in about a month, and they're asking for $3,000 for the flights for these 2 individuals.
Are there any questions? Senator Curtis?
Do we have an exact date for that?
Yes, February 20th. Does it not say? It says February 20th, 2016, 5 p.m.
Right here. Any further questions? We're now online for Protect Negative. Would anyone like to speak against the SFC recommended legislation? Seeing none, move to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Awesome. This. Oh, wait. Oh, there we go. Okay, Delta Sigma Theta is the last one for today. They're holding an event on April 4th in the Nelson Music Room, which has a capacity of 300 individuals. And so they're bringing a spoken word play to campus called Renaissance in the Belly of a Killer Whale. It's about gentrification, and it's part of their large week. And so Delta Sigma Theta has had kind of events in the past that kind of talk about these like social justice issues, and they wanted to once again apply for funding well in advance so they could market for 2 months and make sure that they fill their rooms with capacity. So we're paying for the performance fees for the 3 actresses and the flight number. And it's April 4th.
Are there any questions?
Can I ask a side question that has nothing to do with this?
Yes.
Did you guys have your first auditing this week?
Yeah. Well, the first event that we audited is January 28th, which is tomorrow.
Oh, sorry.
So.
But please update us on that.
Yeah, we'll do.
Send an email.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? All right, we're now in line for Protecting Negative against SFC recommended legislation. Would anyone like to speak against the legislation? Seeing none, move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Sorry, and we have one more new group that I should make sure to get there, email you about, which you didn't. We are the Duke Fights. All right, well then, all right, I guess that'll be next week. He didn't explain it to me well. Okay, all right.
Before we move on, Pro Tem Hopkins, would you like to say a few words to the Senate?
Sure. Did you guys not talk about it earlier?
No. We waited for you.
Okay, good.
Am I chairing next?
No, about general.
No, but I'm chairing next on this.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. Have you guys done?
You already.
Oh, you already did bylaw? Okay. Have you done election?
You already did.
What?
You already did.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll try to be quick. Sorry I wasn't here earlier. In 3 weeks, on the 17th of February, we are honored to have General Martin Dempsey come talk to us in the Senate. And for those of you who don't know, he was the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, so a very important guy, basically highest ranking military officer in the United States. He's on campus this semester as a Rubenstein Fellow Professor, so he's actually teaching a civil military relations class with Professor Peter Fever. Jay's in that. But he's also going to be talking to other student groups about leadership, military stuff, so he's going to be here for an hour. We're actually going to have him from 6:30 to 7:30 on the 17th, so mark your calendars. The Senate will start an hour and a half early on that day. But I wanted to just kind of talk to you guys a little bit today and get some ideas on what you might want to hear from him. So he doesn't really want to have prepared remarks, but we can send him some questions and he can kind of mull those over ahead of time. So if anyone has any ideas on what you might want to hear from him, some ideas that I have for leadership in general as a topic would be a good thing to talk about. If you want to get into foreign policy, government work, that kind of thing, we certainly can, but some of you might not be interested in that. So if anyone has any ideas, tell me now, I can write them down. Otherwise, send me an email. I'll probably make another announcement about it next week, and we can go from there. But does anyone have any questions about the procedure, who he is, what we want to talk about, that kind of thing?
Whoever, I guess, made the, whoever got him to come here in a few weeks, who was that and what was the reason?
Yeah, that was me. AGS reached out to me and said he's going to be on campus. Are there any student organizations that would like to have him come? I said, I mean, we're the student government. I think we're probably the premier organization, maybe other than AGS, that would be relevant to hear him talk. So I wrote back to Allie, who's the program coordinator of AGS, and she said that we're exactly the type of organization that he wants to talk to. So that's happening.
Thanks, Brian.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Any further questions?
Can I just make a quick note? General Dempsey, beyond being like a Duke grad, is a really well-respected official and a person. And so I think like the cool factor is something we're kind of used to, I guess, at Duke. We kind of get desensitized to it by all the different speakers, but to have him take time, he's like literally got tons of engagements in classes to come to DSG and talk to us is a really cool thing.
He was a commencement speaker.
Yes, he was a commencement speaker a couple years ago.
He was the chairman of the Joint
I don't know what
Chiefs of
that
Staff.
thing is.
Well, so like imagine, it's like when the president like needs to talk about military stuff, that's the guy he talks to, like is Martin Dempsey until October, right? That's like the basic, we're gonna go as like basic as possible for people who are not interested in government. So like he held a very, very important position in the United States government, like probably one of the most important ones.
Does he know Bo?
I mean, you could ask him that, but seriously, but more to the point too, I think decorum is also going to be really important for this, so I just think it's important to say it in front of everyone right now, but like for this one, it's like especially important that everyone's paying attention, laptops are down. Like this is a really important opportunity, and it's something that'll show well if we handle it well and we show that we're professional, which can be a challenge. I have that problem too, so.
I mean, I would add, in my opinion, this is a student tie kind of event, but I'm kind of square when it comes to that sort of thing.
You're also wearing a suit and tie right now.
I'm also wearing a suit and tie right now. Yeah. I was just at dinner with student living, so. He was.
Wikipedia.
Associated with Helen's. Sorry, any other questions? I mean, seriously, guys, this is like a really cool opportunity. You know, he's very high in government, so he can talk about government issues too. I just want to get some ideas for discussion. Yeah.
This is next week.
No, this is 3 weeks from now, the 17th of February. I'll remind you guys the week before.
An hour and a half early.
Yes, 6:30. Yeah.
right, any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh, Senator Jennings.
To ask him, what do you think current candidates for their military policies, or more policies? You chew on those for now?
Yeah, that's kind of a tough question. Traditionally, military advisors will stay out of the political fray. He's not going to comment on specific politics. I don't even think he's like declared support for a specific party. Technically, he is a private citizen, but that's very out of line. You know, traditionally, the military, specifically the Joint Chiefs, will serve under any president. It's not a political appointee. You can ask him. Maybe a more appropriate question would be, you know, given the range of military experience, specifically the lack of military experience in the current election cycle, how do you think that will impact decision making? He might talk about that, but I really don't know.
As a question topic, I guess.
Yeah.
So, what I'm thinking is, when you have a position like that, you have to think about some large, long-term goal that can be subject to change by an elected body, such as this one, that has various factions that are often fighting. And I suppose I'd be interested to know how he deals with that in his position, knowing that he can't really just totally shut up, but also that he sort of has a good idea of what needs to happen.
Right. So maybe that could be an area of discussion of saying, like, listen, you're the expert on this area, right, military affairs, but you're not the one making the budget decisions or even the strategic decisions, right? And those two are coming from different places. So how do you, as the resident expert, deal with people making those different decisions? Is that kind of what you're trying to get at?
Yeah, especially because he's there through different factions taking control.
Right, right.
And so it's much of a kind of switch back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, yeah, I can put that on the list. Anything else? Yep.
Yes, so that's after Senator. Yeah. All right, guys, so this is standard traditional annual procedure for setting a timeline for dates and rules and campaigns, rules for the elections of young trustee, DSG president, EVP, SOC chair, and the spring vice presidential and senatorial elections. I guess I can go through it. One important change that there's to note is that elections will have to be from noon on one day to noon on the next day, and that is to prevent technical difficulties on behalf of the UCAB. They don't want to replicate any problems that they've had in the past, and they feel that this is the best way to avert any issues in the future. Go down, Fred. Yep, right here. So, campaign budgeting, $100 for young trustee, DSG president, $50 for the other executive elections, $25 for spring elections. Scroll down to the one. Yep, that's really it. It's basically anything. Senator Sullivan?
Oh, I got first. Sorry, way too excited about that. That's fine. So wait, does the noon to noon thing have to be that? Like, so is UCAE saying we will not do any other thing? Like, is it like an absolute?
Right.
UCAE is telling
Someone
us
did
that?
message me about that. It may have been you. And,
No, it wasn't.
Well, I emailed Ali Schumer about it and didn't get a response. I would prefer it to be the way it was in the past, but considering what I've been told thus far, especially this past semester, it would be best if we held elections from noon one day to noon the next day to avert any problems they may have with their previous.
Okay, well, a follow-up question. Okay, Chair.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of the same question as Jay, right? But like, we saw this change happen. My intuition tells me that like less people would vote. And then we saw like substantially lower voter turnout. And so my question is like, because this to me seems like a huge priority and we should be like freaking out and should be like emailing everyone in UCAE, you know, to like change this, right? If we spend so much time to talk about like, how are we gonna increase voting? And then we're like, oh, noon to noon, because like it might be easier. So my question is like, is this a priority for like us to figure out? And if not, like, can you elaborate a little bit more? Because I think this is like really important, right? That's my question, it's like some more, maybe more justification for why you think that the technical difficulties like justify it?
Right. Yeah, sure.
It's because the people, staff are part of DCE, they're part of a different department, and they're not gonna be there at 5, so it's impossible.
But then why has it happened in the past years, right?
Well, there were glitches in the past years, such as when I ran for the culture suppression, and they had to rehold the election.
Right, but that's not typical, so something changed, something's weird.
Right.
So again, I would just say, maybe this isn't a question, sorry guys, I'm not trying to like soapbox, but like maybe prioritize this.
Okay,
Senator Curtis, then you told Right, Jake?
I just want to ask, so does this have to be passed today until we get answers?
I think it would be best we pass today in order to officialize the rules that he's put in place, in particular for the next trustee election, which is coming up soon.
Yeah, I understand, but I don't think we want to mess up the young trustee election. I don't think we want that to be the guinea pig.
Right, and as for the noon to noon thing, I'll get a collection of different DSG members who want to change this and will contact me. But as for now, I think, like Brian said, its main purpose is to avoid glitches and computer problems that they have with their system that they've had in the past, which have led to electoral issues.
Okay.
One information, if the problem was because they weren't there outside of the lot is fine. If they like weren't in the office, right, that's the problem. Like, it would 4 to 4 be more beneficial, like, would we get a higher turnout if we circled
This is a question I don't think you said.
Is there a reason that we can't just do a week-long voting thing, like?
Week-long voting?
Yeah, like. Many people have proposed that there should be a long election because of increased turnout, and I think it's established. There's much argumentation that we don't care.
I don't know. Senator Curtis, I don't know how feasible that is for UCAE, but you're free to oppose the amendment if you want. I don't know if that's a good idea, especially if you don't know if it's actually possible. All right. Any other questions? This was the
Do you know for the questions were aligned for a negative speech against the bylaw change?
I moved to postpone the resolution for a week.
Second.
Wait, sorry, what is your motion?
There's a motion to table for next week.
Oh, I'll speak against that.
I'm sorry?
Can I speak against that motion? No, I
Someone
don't.
already seconded it, so.
Tara, I can't hear you.
Can I speak against that motion?
The motion?
Yeah, can I speak against it? I have this math discussion, it's all very complicated.
There hasn't even been a.
No, someone seconded it. How does this work?
We're checking, I'm not sure.
Wait, no, so he makes the motion, someone seconds it, he has to.
Yeah, I'm not
then
sure if it's
speak.
debatable.
Oh, yes, to speak in favor of it.
No, I don't know if we have to.
You have my table. You should be on that.
Wait, Keith, can you what's it? We're like, oh, it's highlighted. Oh, it's paper.
Hey, can I say something?
Yep.
So when this all started, there was a meeting between me and John and Ally in UCAE, who basically talked about this issue. And the reason why the 12-12 thing occurs is because we use an outside resource in order to run our elections. I think the technology is called Bronco, but also I should just be thinking about horses. Honestly, that part's not clear to me. Bronto, that's what they said. I mean, not sure. So basically what happens is if we have an election that occurs overnight that ends, at 10 p.m. or something like that, if there is a troubleshooting related issue, like a technology issue, our UCAE staff, even if they work overtime without pay to help us, can't do anything about it because they are not the external technology. Which means if anything goes wrong, the election will have to be rerun, like in the case of Brian Benner's election. So if we want to have an election that can be troubleshot during the election, we need to do 12-12. If we don't mind rerunning elections every once in a while when it goes wrong and we can't contact anyone, y'all can choose to do that, but that's the basic issue. So we don't have agency to say, UCAE needs to stay later and deal with this stuff because it's not them. You can't make another external company work overtime for you.
Okay. So the motion is not debatable. Josh, I'm going to make one point, and if you think this is out of line, call me out on it. I would point out that the election is a week, 2 weeks from yesterday. So just consider your motion within the time frames that we have. So there's a motion on the floor, it's been seconded, it's not debatable. The motion is to table, what is this?
The statute.
Statute, to table the statute until next
I
week.
rescind the motion.
The motion has been rescinded. We're still in line for protected negative speech against the statute. Would anyone like to give that? Senator Sullivan.
Question, everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you like change 12 to 12, so they open at like 10, you could do like 10 to like 5 the next day?
That's an amendment, which I guess is in line.
It honestly depends on what the UCA deems feasible, but I can put it in for now, we can amend it next week, it's back to noon if it's not. Does that sound okay?
What? Sorry.
You want to amend it so the election begins at 10 a.m., right?
Yeah, or just like as long as like you have it.
Point of version.
If we can do that, could we make it like a week-long?
Guys, I do not know what the UCA is capable of technologically, but I do know that they're capable of changing it from noon to noon. If we can talk to UCA between now and next week, and if it is feasible, we can make a move to make an amendment, and we can debate and discuss it next week. Otherwise, I think it's simply foolish not to pass this statute today.
Okay, Jay.
I'm gonna come down. All right, so a couple things. The reason I'm speaking against the legislation as a whole is, as per usual, we haven't properly researched what we're passing. I'm kind of annoyed by that because this happens every time we try and pass something like this. I would prefer that we have all the information we can have before we pass something, instead of saying, oh, we'll pass it right now, and then if we think we can fix it later, we'll go ahead and try and fix it. So that's my first sort of more moral standpoint on this. The second thing is I don't like the noon to noon thing. There's a couple different reasons why I think that that's problematic and also possibly just not going to help us in any way, shape, or form from the electoral perspective. For one fact, I think it's good that it goes later at night. I mean, the old system was 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., which usually covered the gambit of times when people were free. So even if you had a really busy class schedule day, you had at least an open period of time where maybe you could go vote or something like that. Obviously the technological things are an issue. I think overnight is one thing that is just not going to go very well. Like elections that go overnight, it just gets very murky. I think the fact that it's going to go overnight is going to confuse a ton of people. And beyond the voter turnout perspective, I just think that it won't end up working out really well for how the election will actually be run. And I would also say YT is probably one of the most important elections that the undergraduates vote on. And for this to be the guinea pig of testing out a 24-hour noon to noon thing is really not a great idea. I think you test that out somewhere else. I know people had issues with voting for the freshmen this year, but that's not something that that would be one I'd rather guinea pig than the young trustee election, because if the young trustee election gets messed up, it's like a big deal and it's not a great thing because the campaigns go on longer, lots of things just get really nasty. So I'm just really skeptical of the idea of changing it to this. I think we can look into other options. I know this whole point is making sure that we have people available, the tech support team from this company that's running it. I think we can look for other ways of making that possible. There has to be better ways of making it possible. But this is just one thing where I'm just kind of really, I don't think we should do this right now, and I think we should get all the information we can. But beyond that, I also think the whole 24-hour cycle thing is not going to work out well from an electoral perspective. So, questions around this? Tara first.
I think you're really underestimating dude students. What you're saying is they don't know how to use a watch. They don't know how to do.
Oh, it's not about them being confused, or I just think that there's more. When you have 24 hours and you have overnight, I think there's more opportunity. I mean, this is going to sound weird because this is on campus, but corruption in a sense. I think corruption, because I think people have an overnight period in which they can go run around and get more people to vote. And
go get people to vote.
Is that bad? It's forcing more people to vote overnight a bad thing?
Wait, how do you force people to vote for you overnight that you couldn't just do the night before the real election if it was a day election?
I just don't think that that's the best strategy around. Just be I think it's better that more people will vote then if we have more time.
Explain to me the specific mechanism through which someone is running around at night, getting people to vote for them in a way that they would not.
I'm not gonna answer that question because then I'll be on record saying what I really want to say. More to the point. It's fine. Hold on a second. Wait. Here's my thing. So a couple different things. Even if you don't want to submit to my broader point that I think it's a bad idea to go overnight, just because of what can possibly happen in an overnight period. what I think is actually more important is that there are the other reasons I brought up, which is I think testing this out with young trustee is not the best idea. And second of all, I think like the timing that we have right now is maybe not the best to fit like student schedules. I mean, maybe someone proposed like the 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. thing or something like that. I just think moving it overnight, that's just not how really elections typically work in the real world. They happen on one day. I know we're like being like, ah, whatever, screw that. But I just don't like the idea of also not like having all the information when we're making that decision in the first place and saying, oh, we'll just do it right now, and then maybe if we find out better information, we might change it the next time. But if you'd like to talk to me, not when I'm standing right here, about what I really think about why I think the 24 hours is kind of problematic, feel free to come and talk to me after. Questions? Just drop it? Okay, you want me to drop it, Brian? Because right now I have nothing to lose anymore. I'm not running any more elections to pull in Obama. Honestly, like what I think is really like dangerous about a 24-hour election, and this people can attack me for it later, is I think it gives unfair advantage to groups, selective groups especially, and candidates associated with them to use the students at their disposal to go around and get more people to vote, whether it's on East Campus, West Campus, etc. I think it just extends the range because people that are in their dorms at night, that people can go around door to door knocking and saying, hey, can you vote, hey, can you vote, hey, can you vote. I just don't think that that's like the best policy to go about it. I know, and I've done this because I helped run these kind of things before, people message all day and say, hey, just remind me to vote today, all that kind of stuff is fine. But I really feel like what we end up having is this sort of scramble at night where people are running around and have little teams of people running around campus, literally going door to door at people's doors saying like, hey, you need to vote right now. And I just don't think that's a good thing for campus discourse or campus dialogue in any way, shape, or form. And it could, in the long run, if we keep this 12 to 12 thing going, unfairly, I don't think it's as true for necessarily YT, but if it's any like maybe a VP election or something like that, unfairly give advantage to certain people who might have groups of people at their disposal that can go do that. Thinking like an independent student running as a freshman versus for a VP position against someone who's a sophomore who's in an SLG and can have their fellow classmates in their SLG go run around for them. So that's my broader point. People can completely disagree with me on that one, and I totally respect you for that, but that's one thing that I'm concerned about.
Okay, back to questioning.
Any more questions? We're going to pass it anyway, so I tried.
Okay, sorry. You just had a negative speech. Is there anyone who would like to speak in the affirmative?
If we pass this tonight and people talk to UCAE, can it be on the agenda, like, would it be on the agenda next week, an amendment to this statute? Like, if this statute becomes, like, if we approve it and it's on the books, can it be amended next week? Yes. Okay.
Seeing no affirmative speeches, we're in line for a vote. All those in favor of the statute, please say aye.
I'll give the affirmative speech. Okay, it didn't work for my freshman election. It was very upsetting. We have great tech support, but you need to be able to have them on call. We can't have them on call after 5 p.m. That's in the people's lives here, unless we want to allocate separate money that pays them overtime, which is kind of ridiculous. This is a solution that UCAE has worked with us to find. It is a good working solution. I support it. I encourage you all to support it.
Are there any questions?
I actually don't know why it would be better, like, if you had more time to get people on the call, if it's 12 to 12, if they're not at 11.
Well, it is that, like, you can catch it on either end, right? Like, if there's an issue at the beginning, you have the opportunity to catch it at the beginning, you also have the opportunity to catch it, maybe extend it, versus the majority is, like, the biggest focus point of when people vote is after 5 p.m. when you're ending at 10 p.m. Does that make sense?
Any further questions?
This is like somebody's job, and this is what they're saying they think is a good idea. So, motion to vote?
Yeah, but they're not students. Second.
Seconded.
We have full autonomy.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve this question. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor of the statute, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Statute passes.
presentation, just like go over everything pretty quickly, because I don't think a lot of you were here last week, and that's all right. So just want to review everything, and in case you forgot, just remind us. This is going to be a resolution pertaining to campus security and safety. And so this is part of the inspiration and motivation for why we in the services committee and myself believe that we should actually legislate something pertaining to campus safety and security. So these are problems around campus. I mean, east we had the attempted arson, we had the arson in Randolph, we had the attempted explosion in Giles, we have, fire alarms going off all the time. I think that's in Blackwell, it is. We have destruction of benches, that's Wilson, that's Giles, those are completely gone, reduced to rubble more or less. I think some other ones got vandalized too. There were homophobic, anti-Semitic vandalism in various dorms. So a lot of things going on. East Campus, West Campus, we have theft going on in dorms. We had the armed robbery. I mean, even just I think Monday we had an armed robbery in which 2 individuals used handguns to rob an individual. And that was, of course, awful. Central Campus, well, I don't need to explain it too much. We had commissioned a survey, and in that survey, people felt that Central Campus was the least safe of all 3. I think most of us would agree that student body sentiment would apply to that. So this is what we did. We commissioned a survey to look at when people feel unsafe, and if they feel unsafe, at what times do they feel unsafe, and where do they feel unsafe. We actually spoke to students too, to get their opinions on it, what they wanted done, and if they even wanted anything done. We reviewed the crime reports. We spoke to DUPD Police Chief John Daly, twice actually. We spoke to the Vice President of Student Affairs, Dr. Larry Mineta, and we looked at other peer institutions, for example, Vanderbilt, Harvard, those guys, and saw what they were doing in regard to addressing crime situations and in addressing security concerns. So this is what we came up with. We're proposing a resolution which would more or less affirm the student government's support for security cameras on campus. Now, let me be clear. We do have some security cameras in certain areas. So, like, I believe the Freeman Center has security cameras. The Center for Muslim Life at Duke has security cameras. Those places have them. But places like East Campus, they really don't have any. And then you'd be able to look at the footage then to, like, confirm if the person is the person who assaulted you, or if you want to, like, have a witness confirm that that's the person who saw committed the crime. So that's when these recordings would be viewed. They wouldn't be viewed on a daily basis. And then we go to the resolution now. Also, I'm going to be just make a small amendment on it for clarification purposes. There you go. Right. So the amendment that I'd make is, where is it? It is all with the purpose of improving campus security and safety, not on the bottom, and then just adds that sentence by using the recordings to target specifically theft of property, violent crime, sexual assault, and destruction of property was the last one.
We're now in 5 minutes of questions. Does anyone have any questions? 5 minutes begins now. So we're going to go.
So in my short time of Duke, which is just a little over 3 semesters now, I think I can only remember 3 instances of, I think, the crime that this is trying to target. And I can name probably well over a dozen incidents on East Campus of simply college freshmen doing illegal things that are, I guess, that Duke turns a blind eye to. So I'm wondering if this is actually, if putting cameras all over East Campus and West Campus, if that makes students more safe or makes them more vulnerable to having these things being looked at more closely than they are being looked at right now.
Well, in terms of vulnerabilities, the only people who will be vulnerable are those committing acts like destroying benches and trying to burn down dorms more or less, or people sexually assaulting other people. Those are the people that will be vulnerable to this, and I think we should make them vulnerable and accountable.
Okay, so 2 things. First, I feel like a lot of sexual assaults don't happen in front of dorms, they'll happen in dorm rooms, and you're not putting cameras in people's dorm rooms. So I don't really know what that's gonna do. And I know last week we actually did ask you, did you look at any statistics about whether or not security cameras reduce rates of crime or make people feel more safe? Because I'm just concerned that like while I appreciate these, like I think it's a good intent all, but some people might just be more nervous about having all their interactions recorded and stuff rather than feeling more secure.
Sure. So to address the first part about sexual assaults, I'm not arguing that this would be like the cure-all for all issues like that. What I'm arguing is that this will at the very least provide, I guess, some reporting coverage if an event does happen outside of a dorm, or you could look at the events leading up to perhaps a sexual assault. So I mean, it would help
So it'd be like
establish
two
a narrative.
people walking into a building.
Right, it would help establish a narrative. I mean, for example, let's say two people were going into a building and, I don't know, one person's broken the other person, and you could establish that there's some unwanted contact there. You could use that, for example. I mean, that's not like the primary goal of this legislation, but it's one of the added benefits, surely. Also regarding the statistics, so cameras do not deter violent crime like, murder, stuff like that typically. However, and I mean, to be honest, you wouldn't be able to have a response to this because it wouldn't be monitored. However, for the collection of evidence, cameras are very valuable, obviously, because you're able to see what actually happened there. So it would definitely deter that. However, deterrence for cameras typically change like theft and vandalism, things like that. That's really what you'd be deterring with this. I mean, look at once again, back to Giles and Wilson. If we had security cameras up there, I don't think that would have ever happened. Because anyone who was going out there to destroy those benches, to take hammers to them, to reduce them to rubble more or less, they'd be identified. So I think that would act as a strong deterrent.
Senator Caldwell?
What prevents the use of cameras from growing to more and more things deemed worthy of looking at the footage?
Can you rephrase your question?
Basically, what stops from if there's a broken chair or trash outside of an apartment on Central Campus, what stops them, or what stops them, the RA is upset about it, what stops it from being used to look at something like that?
So I guess you're wondering what would stop someone from using this to prosecute petty crimes, and I think just the time it would take to go through that would not make it very feasible for them to turn it into a police state more or less to say, oh, you littered, here's video camera footage of you doing that. I don't think it would make much sense to do that. Plus, the resolution we're bringing forth specifically is mentioning types of crime, which, petty crimes like, jaywalking or littering wouldn't be included in that. I mean, we have to understand the administration may end up going through with this regardless of what we say. So I think it's important that we pass this to provide some sort of limitation saying, yes, we endorse the concept, we endorse the idea, but on these grounds, this is what we want specifically, targeting those crimes, not targeting jaywalking or littering.
So I'm about 100% sure that 80% of the reason why Central is really creepy is because we have yellow lights. I mean, LEDs make things a lot brighter than the schedule, but is there a reason why we're not putting other things in here? Things like that, because I mean, we have money to even help. I mean, I have no idea how much LEDs cost, but I could imagine $200,000 could replace every yellow light on campus into a nice bright LED light, and that might help resolve some of the concerns without having to spend as much money maybe as this, or that might be something the administration might be amenable to.
That's a fantastic question. Lighting was actually the first thing we were looking at. So we went on a walk at Central Campus, we spoke with actually the guys in charge of lighting. And the lights they have there are called high pressure sodium lights. And although LEDs are more expensive, they are in the process of replacing LEDs. They've replaced half of them, he said, so far. And he said within the next 2 years, they expect to have them all replaced. So that's already in the works, that's happening. This is an added measure. And it's an added measure when you look at our peer schools that they already all have. So I think we, as an innovative institution, can really catch up to times on the security measure. Everyone else really has them already. Why don't we? I don't know.
So if people are willing to destroy a bench and act that is rather conspicuous in light of the fact that it's very hard to perform that act undercover, people are probably going to see you destroying a bench if they walk past. Rather, why not destroy the camera line? Sure. I mean, isn't that much more inconspicuous than basically taking a sledgehammer to wooden boards, or otherwise dismembering this giant object that is used by the entire community?
So I'll address two parts to that. First of all, a lot of these attacks on the benches were happening at 3 a.m. in the early morning.
Why do people awake at that time, customers?
Out and about on East, I don't know. I didn't really see that many people out there. Plus, we are under the cover of darkness, and no one's going to go up to you, I guess, and inspect you really, especially at that time. But yeah, destroying the cameras, I mean, sure. If I'm going to go up to These cameras, first of all, aren't gonna be like, at eye level necessarily, they'll be in a higher place, so I guess you have to get a ladder, you have to get up there, and then of course, there'll probably almost certainly be a recording of you from said camera, of you destroying the camera. So, yeah, I think you'd be caught pretty easily.
All right, so your time's elapsed. We're now in line for protecting negative. Would anyone like to speak against legislation? Senator Shaw. If you want, you just speak.
Okay. So obviously I think these are well, I think the destruction of property, sexual assault, and violent crime are all serious issues on our campus. I just don't think that arbitrarily putting cameras in front of dorms is going to change much, because like I mentioned before, sexual assaults don't happen in front of dorm rooms. Most of the crimes that we've seen recently have been in traffic circles and things like that. They're not necessarily in these locations. So I don't know, I just don't really think that this is going to make students safer. If anything, it might just make them more wary. For example, clearly not that many Duke students in general get in trouble for smoking weed, but if that gets caught on camera, I don't know. I just don't necessarily think that this will benefit the student body significantly.
Questions? Does anyone have any questions, Senator Shaw? Senator Gambino?
I don't think that example you brought up is fair as an example, because if something like that would happen, there would have been an instance where they're caught before to go look at the cameras.
Yeah.
Nobody, like Senator Bennett said, is going to be actively looking at these cameras, and therefore things like that would have gotten by, without them, would still go by. I think just the major events when something is reported, it's so nice to have this to go back to and just know. If you don't see anything, you don't see anything, but if you do see something, it's worth it, and it's worth every time.
Yeah.
Senator Speed?
What do you think about if there was a level of crime that, or offense that was
To go check the cameras? Yeah, I think that makes sense, but that's, if that was in the resolution.
Right, so, question to everyone,
We can.
like amended.
It's not like our place to make a threshold though.
Yeah, like a threshold of offense level for the use of the cameras. So like littering, like Senator Caldwell said, broken things outside of a section wouldn't get the camera use, but something like investigating sexual assault would.
So Mr. Griffith, can I do a point of clarification on this? So yeah, what I don't know if it's clear enough, but the amendment I made there, I made it so it specifically target theft, violent crime, sexual assault, and destruction of property. So, if you have another amendment that you want to make that clarifies it even more, if you more than happy to hear it.
How are we making that distinction when we're not the ones installing the cameras or control? How can we say you can only check it for this?
We can.
It's not our money, it's not.
Is this a question directed to Senator Shaw?
It's to just
I mean, I wouldn't know that answer.
everyone, but.
Senator Davis?
Point of privilege, yes. Answer the question. I think that's more an indictment of the mechanism of a resolution in general than it is of this particular resolution. No resolution would just really carry much force other than DSG seal of approval. So, if you have a problem with that, I think that's fine. But insofar as we can do anything to try to lend legitimacy to only certain types of camera use, I think that this does a better job, especially as Senator Brunetti brought up. If they're going through with this anyway, it's good to be able to point to a DSG resolution saying you used this for something unsanctioned by DSG, and then you can get mad at it. Which is about the extent of our power in any security related issue. So.
Any further questions? With discretion of the chair, so allow you to speak.
Hi. My question would be, Lizzie was saying something about having a specific threshold for when you can use cameras. Is there anything in the resolution that talks about inadvertently seeing a crime take place when it wasn't what you were originally looking for? Say that there is an allegation of some sort of sexual assault or a robbery or something. You go to the cameras to look for that. Regardless of whether you find it or not, as you're watching the footage, you see a kid breaking a bottle outside of a section or somebody smoking weed. Is there anything that dictates whether action could then be taken to prosecute that crime?
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
So I think that it would be friendly if, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, if we said something along the lines of the cameras must be used for the primary intent based off of something else that was seen. They must be only responding to something that was noticed either in person or something that was filed, reported to DUPD, officers of conduct, something like that.
Yeah, I like the sentiment of it. You can just like phrase it like
Right.
precisely. I think that would work.
I can play another right now.
So then,
Yeah, we can do that.
would some sort of immunity then be awarded to the person who was caught doing the other thing? Or, like, how would that happen? I guess that's where the confusion would exist.
Mr. Merkel, can I answer? So, I mean, there's no way that we can like legally, as a student government, say, like, no, you can't do this, you can't prosecute people. But if we look at the precedent, there's no precedent of them ever using cameras to prosecute people at Duke or really at any other institution I can think of for like breaking a bottle, for example. Unless you're like breaking a person's head, so that's a different story. However, as Senator Curtis said, we can at least put out a statement saying like, this is what we want it to be used for. And if you use it in another way, we're going to speak out against that, we're going to protest that, as opposed to like, voting this down and having nothing to say out there, we put them up anyway, and then we protest it like, oh, well, we didn't know you didn't want us to use it for that. So at least we can put out a statement of what we want to limit it to, is what this resolution does.
Okay. Question time is the last, would anyone like to speak in affirmative? All right, seeing none, move to a vote. All those in favor, we are now voting on the resolution. All those in favor of approving the security, yes?
We're just going to amend it to that.
Okay, you didn't put it on yet?
Is that?
You put it on?
We're just.
You guys want to come up here and do it?
I have it up here. See if something related to primary purposes to follow on that was indexed for. Suggestions. I get the sentiment that comes reported, and everyone checks cameras to see what you did, and they see me on there also, but they can't because I'm not the one they're calling. So I'm able to check for it.
If your crime would have met multiple use of camera, then it possibly be however, so like they see me, if they say I on someone, outside of one door, and instead they see you in the dorm over robbing someone, so they can be far back and use me here.
But not
not a huge gallery, drop, and litter trash bag or something, yeah.
We will now be voting on the security resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Right.
Motion for There's a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand.
The hand raised or the?
All right, this is a majority. Resolution passes. Right. Wait. Moving on to the final piece of the agenda. New business, DSG constitutional change presented by Senator Joe Pecoraro and Senator Lieutenant Ford.
This is super simple and it's not up there yet, so I'll make it quick. As of now, the pro tempore, Brian is like elected in the fall when the new year starts. But like as a member of exec, the pro tempore is behind when they get elected on everything that exec did over the summer. So instead of having that continually happen, we're proposing that the pro tempore get elected with YT in April of like the year before, so that they're not behind when they're elected now.
Not with YT there at the last meeting.
At the last meeting, we did.
All right. questions? Vice President Wiseman.
With people, so right now, I'm just going to use Jay as an example, if he's okay with that.
Yeah, go for it.
So Jay and Brian both ran for pro temp. Jay was on Senate last year, but was on 2 years ago, and thus was eligible for pro temp. Because would people in that situation who aren't present for that session of Senate still be eligible, or does this make it that you would need to be a senator the year before?
But John, I'm going to punt right back to you because I sent this to John and I said this is an important issue and I don't think I'm the right person to decide it because it's literally affecting me. So I asked for the IA committee to discuss it so you guys can probably give a better perspective on what IA talked about and decided.
This is only first reading.
Yeah, so do you want to answer last question?
Want me to answer?
Well, Joe, if you know what was discussed, then.
I'll leave it to John, if that's okay.
What was the question?
So right now, if you're a senator 2 years prior, you can run for a pro temp that year. Now, because you'd be electing the year before, would you have to be a senator in that, like, one previous session? Or would you be like inviting anyone who was recently elected to?
Okay, so we'll release the internal affairs committee to hash it out for second readings.
Is this constitutional referendum going to be put on the YT ballot?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, if it receives a second reading and it's confirmed, it would be required to go on the next ballot, which would be the next Tuesday, which is YT.
Can I move to table this until after the YT election?
Why?
I think that this would take away from the YT election. I think it would distract students. I don't think they'd be able to make an informed decision on this, and I think it would turn on extra votes.
All right, the motion is to table this until after the young trustee election. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion passes. Okay. At this point, is there a motion?
Yeah.
All in favor?